Well, the oil continues to gush in the Gulf of Mexico, and the oil guys were questioned on Capitol Hill today. Here's a sound clip.
Incidentally, which one of you bitches is my mother?
Yeah, that's the essence of what it was. BP's McKay, Lamar McKay, the president and chairman of BP, he said, quote, BP is one of the leaseholders in the operation of this exploration well. As operator, BP hired Transocean to conduct the well drilling operations. Transocean owned the Deepwater Horizon drilling rig and its equipment, including the blowout preventer. So he says, by the way, here are the questions that McKay, this Dan Frumkin, blogging over at the Huffington Post, really, really good blog. So McKay asking himself rhetorically, what caused the explosion and fire? Why did the blowout preventer fail? And let's note also that the blowout preventer that was on this oil well was not the type that is by law required in Brazil and off the coast of Norway that can be remotely activated. Instead, it could only be activated by the platform itself, and the platform caught on fire and burned and sunk. Why did they not have the remotely activated blowout protector? Because it cost $500,000, and Dick Cheney, when his energy policy task force got together to make the rules for what people would have to have when they're doing offshore oil drilling, decided that was too expensive. Yeah, that's the word. That's the phrase they use. Too expensive. $500,000 to prevent an oil well from blowing out and be able to turn it off remotely from any ship anywhere that can just send a signal down. $500,000, too expensive. So here we have the head of BP. He says it's not our fault. It's Transocean's. So then Stephen Newman, the head of Transocean, comes out, and he says, Transocean says, what is most unusual about the explosion in this case is that it occurred after the well construction process was essentially finished. Drilling had been completed on April 17th, and the well had been sealed with cement to be reopened by the operator at a later time if the operator chose to put the well in production. Indeed, at the time of the explosion, the rig crew, at the direction of the operator, was in the process of displacing drilling mud. For that reason, the one thing we know with certainty is that on the evening of April 20th, there was a sudden catastrophic failure of the cement, the casing, or both. Therein lies the root cause of this occurrence. Without a disastrous failure of one of those elements, the explosion could not have occurred. Now, who was doing the mudding and the casing? Halliburton! So Halliburton, so they drag out Halliburton's Tim Probert, their chief safety officer, and he says, well, Halliburton, as a service provider to the well owner, is actually contractually bound to comply with the well owner's instructions on all matters important to understanding the role, relating to the performance of all work-related activities. In other words, we just did what they told us to do. So BP says, not our problem, Transocean owned the rig. Transocean says, yeah, it was our rig, but the blowout happened after Halliburton was messing with the well. Halliburton says, well, yeah, but we were just doing what Transocean and BP told us to do. There's a phrase for this I don't think you can use in polite company, so I won't. What fascinates me, or what fascinates the wrong word, what I want to know is who were those 11 guys who died on this oil rig? I'm assuming that they were all men. I may be wrong. Who were the 11 people who died on this oil rig? What happened to them? I read one news story, and then it was gone. And this is back on April 21st or 22nd, about some sheriff in Louisiana who said that he got a 911 call from a boat or a ship out in the area of the drilling rig, or maybe it was even one of the ones that was pumping water on the thing while it was still on fire, saying that they had found the safety capsule. There's apparently a capsule that the crew can climb into and eject themselves off the rig, and it will bob on the surface of the ocean, and it's got food and water in it, and it keeps them safe in the event of a rig going down. And according to this sheriff, now again, I have no documentation for this other than I saw it on the internet, right? So this was one of those news stories that went by, and this is why it's provoking. Anyhow, he said that the people who called him on 9/11 were afraid to open it because they were quite certain that the bodies were cooked. So what happened to those 11 people? You know, there's been no discussion of this whatsoever in the media. It was the fate of the miners in that Massey coal mine where those miners died just a couple of weeks before this. It was the fate of the individual human beings that fueled the outrage of the American people and fueled the focus of the American media. And so I'm of the opinion, and I may well be wrong on this, but I don't think so. I'm of the opinion that BP, Halliburton, and Transocean have been doing absolutely everything they can, and I would bet that part of that involves going to the survivors of these people and saying, sign this waiver that says that you'll never talk to the news media and we'll give you some money. Because they have already been busted doing that to people who have lost their livelihoods along the Louisiana shore coast. They're doing everything they can to prevent the human face of this disaster from showing up on television. Now, one of the other things that I saw in a news report, I saw this in the Wall Street Journal, I remember where I saw it, was that at the time of the explosion, the initial explosion and fire, that there were several senior executives of British Petroleum on board the rig celebrating their safety record. Now, when I saw the pictures of this thing listing to the side and then going down, you can see the helipad. There's a big hole burned in the helipad. Did those executives get off in the helicopter? Or were they among the 11 people who died? As the old cliche goes, inquiring minds want to know. I would love to know what's happening with this thing. And then to top it off, in the news today, the story that British Petroleum so far claims that they've spent, about $350 million on cleaning this thing up. Now, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what the ultimate cost will be, but that's 4 days of their profits. They're making $93 million a day in profit. 3.8 days of profit is what they have spent so far cleaning, doing cleanup on this. So who's going to pay? Well, when they were questioned in front of Congress today, the representative from British Petroleum said, yep, we'll take responsibility for this. We'll pay all legitimate claims. What's a legitimate claim? Not going to tell you. Well, what about this law that says that your liability is limited to $75 million? It was passed by Republicans in Congress after the Exxon Valdez spill. Now, some Democrats, too. What about that? Are you gonna pull out the law and say we don't have to pay beyond $75 million? Oh, no, we'll pay a little more than that. How much more? Looks like it's going to be $14,000 million. Well, I don't know. We'll just pay all legitimate claims. What's a legitimate claim? Well, not going to tell you. Can you spell Exxon Valdez?